Unlike the other courses offered at King's, Host is unique because it's not stuck in one century, but instead it explores everything from the beginning of time to today.
My thesis that I'm working on this year is about the political and social and technological history of the atomic clock.
So you get to hear from engineers, mathematicians, psychologists, biologists, and hearing these alternate perspectives in the liberal arts really creates a well-rounded education.
You read really fascinating papers and then you get to go into class and discuss them. And there are all sorts of people taking these classes from Dalhousie as well.
Those are some students who've studied in the History of Science and Technology program here at the University of King's College in Halifax, Nova Scotia. That's from a promotional video for the program. Welcome back to This is King's podcast, where we explore all things King's. I'm Pauline Dakin. I teach in the School of Journalism, Writing and Publishing. We're continuing this season's focus on the various programs at King's and their directors. And we wanted to hear about what's being taught and how that connects to the world around us. Today, we welcome Melanie Frappier, the director of the History of Science and Technology program. She's also the coordinator of the offshoot program, the Certificate in Medical Humanities. Melanie, welcome.
Thanks you for having me.
When I get myself prepared for these interviews and doing a bit of research, I'm always surprised to find out the things I don't know about some of my fellow professors here. You're a doctor of philosophy.
Yes.
And a humanities professor.
Yes.
But you also have a degree in engineering physics.
Yeah, I started as an engineer.
So tell me about the path that got you here and how it all comes together.
This is actually quite common as a story in history of science and technology or philosophy of science. Many of us start in science because we are curious about the world, but we end up in programs that don't answer our questions. So I went into engineering and physics because I wanted to know, how do you discover things? Just to realize that as an undergraduate degree, you're not taught about how to discover things about the world, simply how to apply them. And I stumbled upon an elective that was called History and Philosophy of Science that had been actually taken out of the physics program at the university where I was because students came back to their physics class with too many questions. But they had forgotten to take it out of the engineering physics degree. And so I got to take it. And it just changed my life. It was taught by someone who had been a chemist at 3M and had abandoned chemistry for philosophy of science. And the first day he told us that it's impossible to measure time without measuring space. And as an engineer, I took this as a personal challenge. And I went and I spent a whole day in the library trying to figure out a way to measure time without measuring space. And after realizing it couldn't be done, I went back to the class and decided that I would do a combined degree in engineering and philosophy of science. And then I got lucky and was able to always keep doing more philosophy of science. And that's how I ended up not becoming an engineer. But what was fantastic was the response of the engineers, because I thought they would be confused about why someone would want to do philosophy, or they would be dismissive. But actually I started having professors who had side businesses offering me jobs after graduation because I had this double degree.
And you were able to answer some of the questions that a lot of scientists are left with.
Well, I certainly ended up answering one of my questions, which was basically trying to understand the indeterminacy principle or the uncertainty principle of Heisenberg. The way it was taught to me, it was that it was just about errors in measurements. And so I did not understand how that could be the core of quantum mechanics. So I ended up doing my PhD degree in trying to understand what this was all about, and turned out something much more complicated but much more interesting. And so for me, history and philosophy of science has always been my way of doing science, but also doing it in a way that is much more socially relevant and intellectually challenging.
What does this look like in your teaching?
Oh, well, the teaching is really taken over by the students. What I do is offer a number of readings that I find interesting and about which I have questions. And I hope students may help me answer the questions. But usually what they do is actually bring just more questions and different kinds of answers, and they reframe everything. And so each year, is totally unique, not only because each year the readings are updated, but because students come with new questions. And that happened like this very morning in the human experiments class, where we were talking about evidence-based medicine. And then when the students just go, yeah, but now all of this research is trickling through influencers on YouTube and then I just realized that next year there will be a whole lecture on YouTube influencers and their impact on medical research.
Mm-hmm. And so do you ever get to see that moment you had where the light comes on and people catch fire with this idea of history and philosophy of science?
I do, but it's usually much brighter than mine. We have students who suddenly do fantastic things and transform everything around them. So we had the students in the time of class that certainly realized that those phylogenetic diagrams that show the relationship between species could be used to think about geological time, and ended up doing his honors thesis on this, but with an assist from the Archibald Lab in Genetics at Dalhousie, and has gone from doing history of science to being, a lead researcher in a genetic laboratory based out of this research, and is just changing how we think about the evolution of bacteria. So, we see this all the time. But this is what's special about King's. Students do research right from the get-go, and so we see the world being reinterpreted and reimagined and reinvented all the time.
Yeah, exciting stuff is going on.
Yeah.
As the director of History of Science and Technology, how do you describe the program to people?
Well, the program is what students make it, but how do you describe it? It's a program that does, in a way, two things, but they're related, of course. Right? One thing is we're about trying to understand scientific knowledge. So it's really us looking at how knowledge is created, developed, justified, but then knowledge gets entrenched in society. It influences what we do. It influences our decision. It influences how we understand the world, and so. Our work here is also about understanding the impact of science and technology on society and the reverse. And so it takes people right in very different kinds of research, from understanding how we ended up believing dinosaurs had been killed by a comet, right, and how we developed the evidence for this, to people researching why in the 1970s people put fish and other tidbits in Jell-O.
I never got that. Yeah. When I look at some of the courses, there's such a diversity of topics. You've got the scientific revolution and the history, culture, and science of beer, and women and gender in science, and on and on. I guess, how many people are drawn to this because they're science students? And how many are drawn because they're art students who are just sort of open to these bigger questions?
It is 50-50. And that's where the magic happens, because you teach a class on the history of chemistry, and someone is coming in because they did a course on alchemy and they want to know more. And you have the chemist who's taking this because they want to understand where the disciplines come. And then they sit together and they start talking about ether. And then at some point they just go, what are you talking about? And one is talking about Aristotelian ether, which is the stuff that made the stars. Whereas the other is talking about ether, like the alcohol ether. And then they just go, why are we using the same word? And then try to use history to see how both are related. And
worlds collide.
The words collide, and then magic happens.
You are listening to This Is King's podcast, and you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. We hope that you'll follow us and like us. My guest today is Melanie Frappier, the director of the History of Science and Technology program here at King's. Melanie, I know that there are multiple ways for students to get involved with HOST. They can do a combined honors degree. How does all of that work?
Well, like all the other upper year programs, we're not a standalone program. So we are a demanding one, but you cannot just graduate in history of science and technology. And part of the reason is that we want students to also have a discipline. It can be literature, it can be biology, it can be sociology, but it could also be physics. And we want them to bring this in discussion with the history of science. And so students choose another disciplines in arts, humanities, social sciences, or the sciences, and they combine this with history of science. And then they do both as they go. Students who don't want to do a combined honors, which would require research as an undergraduate, can also take a minor in history of science, which show a good capacity and a broad knowledge, but is not as demanding. And hopefully soon they'll be able to do a certificate if they're interested.
This is in the works now.
This is in the works, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Students also have a journal.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. The journal used to be called Tooth and Claw, after the famous line in Tennyson's poem. But a few years ago, students actually decided to change it for mycelium. First, because they don't think that that nature is drenched in blood, as Tennyson describes, but is actually a cooperative environment, right, where we see how different beings live together and contribute to each other's well-being. Mycelium represents this, but they also thought that, academically speaking, history of science and technology is a kind of mycelium where people come from different places or doing different things, habited different place of the ecosystem, and all contribute to the field. And so this year we are going to probably get the largest issue ever, and it's again very exciting to see how broad and different the contributions are, from poems to research essay on ancient alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The provincial government, as I know you know, has mandated program reviews at all the universities in the province and is really wanting to focus on job-ready graduates and labor market successes. How do you advocate for a program like HOST in this kind of an environment? It's clear what students get, but how do you make the case to the province, for example, or the parent, or the, yeah?
Well, the way we do it is through our students. And we had this fantastic student who became a geologist. And the way he describes this is that he learned geology in the Faculty of Science, but he learned to be a geologist in history of science and technology. And so basically the way we argue for this is that if you're going to be a scientist or a technologist, you're going to actually need to know more than how to apply science, right? No good researchers is a researcher without thinking about how do you conduct good research, and that's something we do. Or no engineers, right, is going to be able to do a good design without thinking about how will my design impact society at different levels, and that's what we do.
It's the context.
It is that's exactly it. And on the humanities side, well, no one now, right? We live in a world where science and technology always impact what we are doing. And so whether you're going to be a sociologist or you're going to be a theater critic, science and technology at some point will impact what you're doing. And so this is what we're providing. And this is why we're also not a standalone degree. We are what complement your degree and actually make you ready for your job. So we're not providing a professional degree, but we're providing the training you need to be a professional.
I should also mention that you've had another hat that you've been wearing recently, the coordinator of a new program, the Certificate in Medical Humanities.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Well, medical humanities is an offshoot of history of science and technology, and like us, it's an interdisciplinary program. So bring literature and economy and psychology and history and philosophy and ethics all together in order to offer a broader understanding of health. Health doesn't happen like just because you have a right pill or because someone does a surgery, right? There's a whole ecosystem, and how we view health, how we react to the healthcare system, how we live through illness, how we help others stay healthy requires a whole lot of various different skills that are, right, often heavily based on humanities. So, for example, the physician that translate the new research to their colleagues, right, that does translational medicine. Well, this is someone who's steep right into a training as a humanist. And so the Certificate in Medical Humanities is providing this to the Halsey and King's community. It's done jointly by the two programs. And so we have both students who are doing a humanities degree but are interested in understanding, for example, how we express concerns about our health in literature. But we also have the people who are training to become physicians who come because they need this understanding in order to understand their patients. And so again, right, we're not training the physicians as physicians, but we are giving them the other skills that they need to be good physicians.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully health administrators and
yes,
so
health
on as
administrators.
Well.
We have health administrators. We have people who go in law related to health, nurses, physiotherapists, all of those people, emergency technicians, are all coming together, which is quite unique for them, because it is very interesting to see a paramedic tell the future physician, no, here's how this plays on my end, and here's what I value on my end, and have those discussions about how we're going to respond humanly and fully to an emergency, a medical emergency. So it's very interesting.
All those connections, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Is there anything I didn't ask you about, Melanie, that you want to add?
Well, history of science and technology, because of historical reason, has this gives this impression that we're all about the past. But I hope our discussion makes clear that actually we use the past to understand the present and to think about the future.
Mm-hmm. Melanie, thank you so much for this, for making time to talk about this.
Well, thank you for having me. It's fun to be finally in the
Welcome to
radio
the
room.
radio room. Yeah, and good luck with the new certificate program.
Thank you.
Melanie Frappier is the director of the History of Science and Technology program and the coordinator of the new Certificate in Medical Humanities here at King's. If you are a King's alum or student or just interested in campus life, follow us on your streaming platform of choice. And if you're so inclined, give us a like while you're there. I'm Pauline Dakin. Thanks to my co-producer and technician, Mark Pinio. And of course, thanks to you for listening.